Recently, another writer asked me a question about dialogue tags, and it reminded me that no one can agree on dialogue stuff. Why? So here, this is the final video about dialogue tags, the full, complete, answer all of your questions video. What to use, what not to use, and how much. Because dialogue tags are all about rhythm, control, and not being annoying. Dialogue tags do one simple thing. They tell the reader who is speaking. That's it. "You're not the boss of me," he said. That's the dialogue tag. "He said" doesn't carry any emotional weight. It doesn't change the reader's perception of the story. It's utilitarian. It's there to make sure that we're not confused. And this is why, oftentimes, you'll hear people referring to dialogue tags as being invisible. Readers are so exposed to them that they've been trained to skip over dialogue tags. And while your brain sees these dialogue tags, you may not hear them in your internal voice as you read. Your brain just uses that dialogue tag to follow the story. Who is speaking right now? And we always have to address this, even though I think this is just blown out of proportion. Lately, there have been talks of an ideology, maybe, surrounding "said is dead," a catchy term that encapsulates a simple idea. In writing, every word is important. So, if "said" has become this invisible utilitarian thing, then we should stop using it. Why use "said" when other dialogue tags can carry more imagery and description? Now, to be fair, I see so many people speak out against the concept of "said is dead." I've never actually heard someone making this argument. I think it might have just become the equivalent of like the writing boogeyman. If you believe that we should move away from "said," if you believe in "said is dead," let me know your case in the comments below. I would love to hear more about it from someone who is like really passionate about it rather than just some straw man argument against it. "Said" and "asked" are these utilitarian dialogue tags. But what about dialogue tags that are more than utilitarian? Dialogue tags that actually contribute to the story. You'll notice that just about every story in the world uses more than "said" and "asked" with their dialogue tags. That's where we get more fancy dialogue tags. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You can't do this to me," he growled. Or, okay, look, these are not bad, but okay, one example here was pretty bad. And here, just so we have it on file, let me do this. Hello, is this thing on? Okay. "Do not use the word ejaculated as a dialogue tag. No further questions. Thank you." Are fancy dialogue tags bad? As writers, should we avoid using them? No, that's wrong. You will use dialogue tags different than "said" or "asked." So the question is when, why, and how much is too much? Here's the deal. Let's start with the rule, right? The rule that we should follow. Fancy dialogue tags are only bad when they start drawing attention to themselves. Good writing is invisible. When they replace better writing with worse writing, that's when it's a problem. I know that sounds strange. Let me give you an example. More often than not, "You'll regret this," she said, clenching her fists, is a better writing choice than "You'll regret this," she growled. One brings imagery, character, and action into the scene, and the other one doesn't. For lack of a better word, it tells us how the character feels, and it doesn't show us how they feel. That's the rule. But you know, I love breaking rules. There are plenty of good reasons to use fancy dialogue tags, and I'll sum it all up into these 2 points. Use fancy dialogue tags to avoid repetition and add tone. Let's start with repetition. In dialogue-heavy scenes, especially with many short dialogue exchanges, the word said can be used so many times that it becomes distracting in itself. Remember, good writing, it's invisible. Fancy dialogue tags can help you avoid that repetition. In similar regards with repetition, we also have this idea of rhythm. Now, I plan to actually tackle rhythm and another concept, cross-sentence pollution, crazy I know, in a later video. It may be the single easiest way to improve your prose, so subscribe and check that out in the next month or so. But as a basic introduction, rhythm in your dialogue is super important, especially in quick exchanges. In a fast-paced exchange, maybe my previous example of "you'll regret this," she said, clenching her fists, might actually be a worse choice simply because we need the dialogue to have an immediate response. Some other character immediately saying something back. And if that's the case, we don't want to break our rhythm by writing a bunch of action or detail. In this case, the idea of rhythm would actually recommend that we just write, "You'll regret this, she growled." So how can we conserve the rhythm of writing, get action in the story with fancy dialogue tags? Action tags.
Yay!
A favorite of mine. Action tags quickly convey action without you having to write the dialogue tag. For example, "Do you know what I mean? He wiggled his eyebrows." Or, "Let's make it quick. She twisted the key in the door." These are action tags. Pairing dialogue with action in this way means that you don't have to add a normal dialogue tag. It serves the same role as "Let's make it quick," she said, twisting the key in the door. Now you might be thinking that this sentence doesn't sound bad. Can't you write action with dialogue tags? Yeah, of course you can. And having all of these options is what gives you the tools to avoid repetition. So that's point one. It's been a while since we talked about points 1 and 2. Okay, what about adding tone? This one is simple. Use fancy dialogue tags to add to the tone of a moment without sacrificing pacing. And now it's up to you to use the judgment for what dialogue lines need to be whispered. And you need to know when it's important for the story, when it adds to the atmosphere of the moment. Those are the moments where fancy dialogue tags are useful. You often see these moments as something like, "I trusted you," she whispered. The tag of whispered adds to the atmosphere of the moment, especially when it's followed by further detail of action. Now, naturally, the next question you might have is this: how much is too much? I've told you that fancy dialogue tags are to be avoided when it replaces better writing, but it can also be used effectively. So what's the deal? My recommendation is to follow the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your dialogue should be done with 20% of your dialogue tags. No, I'm not expecting you to crunch the numbers in your story, but I want you to keep those numbers in mind. When writing, you need to have a good reason to deviate from those standard dialogue tags. In fact, there's this video from almost a year ago where Tim from Hello Future Me, great writing channel, and Brandon Sanderson sit down to talk about bad writing advice. And there, they talk about dialogue tags. In that video, Tim does the math. He takes the first 100 pages of a couple different Sanderson books and creates a split. How much does Sanderson use said or asked compared to how much he uses other dialogue tags? And wouldn't you know it, it's right around the 80-20 mark. This is a fantastic video and a lot of fun to watch, link in the description. One last note, study the writers that you admire and adjust your writing based on the genre that you write in. Use this video as a baseline, but do some intentional reading for the authors you love. For even more on dialogue, check out my 3-part series where I answer your dialogue questions and talk about grammar and punctuation and all that good stuff. If you like videos like this, breaking down writing to help you be a better writer, come join us in the Discord linked below, like this video, and subscribe for more. And as always, thank you for watching.